am Jodi Rush. I am the coordinator of Children and Family Ministry for the Cumberland Presbyterian Church. Thank you so much for joining this presentation of Cumberland Reflections that is on celebrating Lent and Easter. In a few minutes, I'm going to be joined by Reverend Sandra Shepherd, and together we hope to share with you some ideas that will spark your imagination. You're going to hear us say that a lot. We shared just a few ideas in this presentation. There are so many out there, but the few that we share, we hope it will spark something in your mind that you can use for celebrating Lent and Easter in your context. And that this will be something that you can use personally with your family at home, with your church family, a Sunday school class, you name it. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy. In Faithful Families for Lent, Easter, and Resurrection, Tracy Smith says the very first place to start your Lenten planning is by setting the intention for your season. You can look at the many, many ideas she has in her book, which are many and good, very many good ideas. You can talk to your colleagues. You can think back to the things you've done in the past that have worked or maybe haven't worked. All of those ideas are swirling around and you're ready to start planning. But stop and set the intention, your intention for the season. And what she means by that is to think about these things. What kind of Lent and Easter season do you want for your family or congregation? Do you want the year to be simple and carefree, or does it need to have a little more depth and details? Do you want to plan for practices that would include little ones in your congregation or youth, or do you primarily plan for adults? Do you want to focus on prayer, on fasting, on almsgiving, or do you even know what any of those things mean? Maybe that's where you need to start. But wherever you start, these are the things you need to think about first. And we're going to give you some more time to think about that at the end of this presentation.
Sounds good. You know, as you plan for Lent and Holy Week and Easter, there are so many things to consider. You need to know, as Jodi said about your intentions, you need to know what it is you're trying to accomplish and what kind of a mood are you setting. But you also need to know things like, what's your group? Is this intended to be a at-home family thing with children or with adult individuals? Is it intended to be a congregational event? Is it intended to be a citywide thing because you have different congregations cooperating together of different faiths, but they all want to celebrate these things together? You need to know also not only the size of the group that you're dealing with, but your budget. You need to know your volunteer capacity, because even if you do all the fine planning by yourself, somebody's got to produce this thing. So when you make those decisions, be sure that you're paying attention to your volunteers as well. I think it's a good idea to get people involved in the planning as well, but definitely have a crew ready to help you with your work. No matter what it is that you choose to do, you'll find some ideas today that will spark your imagination, and that's our idea. We don't want you to necessarily pick up these practices and do them in your own church or your own setting. You may, but you may be sparked. Your imagination may be sparked by something that you see and you think, you know, in our situation, it'd be better if we, whatever. That's what we're hoping to do today. We'll show you lots and lots of ideas that will spark your imagination. Part of preparing for Lent, to celebrate Lent, is dressing the sanctuary, but also dressing the pastor, dressing the people who are helping lead worship. One thing to do is, if you have acolytes, be sure that they have a purple robe, purple cincture on during Lent. That helps to bring in the idea of purple in Lent. I'm going to show you several stoles and talk to you about each one of them quickly to go through the Lenten season. I would start with this for Ash Wednesday, just a dark, ashy color. Then throughout Lent, I like to use purple, and it's perfectly appropriate to use different shades of purple, but I think that darker, more somber purple really helps to set the mood. Sometimes I even like to start the season with a little bit lighter purple and get it darker and darker and darker as we approach the cross, because that seems to make sense to me. When it's time for Palm Sunday, in this congregation, we also use that as Passion Sunday. So here I have palms, but they're in that darkness of Passion Week. For Maundy Thursday, communion time, something with deep purple grapes is perfectly appropriate. If you want to add some wheat or something like that, that's fine. Anything that will add to that sentiment of communion is a good idea, particularly using the purple if you have options. Then, of course, on Easter morning, you want something white and bright and celebratory. It's time for the risen Christ to be celebrated. Easter season lasts a lot longer than just Easter Day. I like to change up my paraments a little bit. I like to use this stole because it just reeks of springtime and new life to me. And that is what we celebrate in Eastertide. We celebrate the newness of life and the return of life. And so this seems appropriate to me. Even though it's not traditional, it seems just right to me. Maybe that'll spark your imagination. In addition, we have paraments in the sanctuary. We dress the sanctuary. We set the stage for what's happening. And a banner like this, a little hanger like this, or a banner up on a wall, or any other thing that helps to set the mood, set the stage, is a good idea. Here are some more ideas for that. If you want to make banners to help to set the stage in the sanctuary, or frankly in any other part of the church or home, there are always little banner blanks to buy at places like Michael's and Joann's and Hobby Lobby and art supply stores. They have a pocket already there for a rod to go through, and you simply decorate the front however you want to and hang them. You could also use non-standard materials, which is usually what I do, such as a fabric shower curtain. This one has the grommets already built in. You could probably cut this in half and have a really nice shape for a banner, and then hook with these, instead of with shower hooks, just regular hooks, and hang them up on the wall with the command hooks to have them displayed however you want to. Whatever you want to do with this would work. I've even used a window sheer before. Now, you might think that's an odd thing for a banner, but if you have big open windows and can hang it in front of that, and use deep colors of paint on it, it's gorgeous when the light shines through. When I'm setting the stage in the sanctuary, I like to pull lots of things in here and play with them until I have the look that I want. That's how my imagination gets sparked. Maybe you have a different technique. Maybe you like to draw out your plan first. I like to just get all my stuff out and look at it and kind of play with it until I find the look that works for me. Here are some of the things I like to play with. Okay, that's a pretty good start. I actually have a lot more off camera. Any of you that know me know that's the truth. But this is what I'm going to play with for right now and show you some ideas that will spark your imagination. I think of Lent as being a wilderness time. Jesus is in the wilderness, and I think of rough and rustic and not finished and nice and fancy things. So burlap would be a great base for any kind of a tablescape or a banner or a prayer station or anything like that. This is a nice cross that was made from some twisted vines, and it looks very rugged, and I think it's appropriate for this time of year. The sand and the rocks also give me that wilderness feel. There's some things in a little take-home bag that someone gave me while I was at a conference. A little sand and cross and a little candle, a rock, a seashell, and a little person. I suppose that's Jesus in the wilderness. So these are some small things that you could use. You don't have to have a big space. You could have just a tiny little space and still set out some really good symbols and help set the stage. Of course, candles are always helpful in a worship setting, and others too. Don't leave them unattended. Purple candles can be pretty expensive. I've found some purple pillars that are good, but purple candles, tapers are usually a little expensive, and as you know, they drip wax all over the place, so you have to be really prepared to do that if you want to use those candles. One little cheat I found was to use purple plastic cups that I got from like the dollar store or something like that, and I put little white votive candles in them, and so then I could make an entire batch of these, one for each week of Lent. And then at the beginning of Lent, we light all the candles. Then the next week, light all the candles and then snuff one out. The next week, light all the candles, snuff two out, and so on until you get to the darkness of the end of Holy Week. Using anything that's purple is a good idea, just again to help to keep the theme in there, but don't use a little purple toy truck or something like that. I mean, it needs to have a reason to be there on the table. So if you were using this, it would need to symbolize water being poured, for example, or maybe you would want to have flowers in it, purple flowers, to help to set the stage. So you would need to have a reason for all the things that you do. Again, be intentional. If you want a lighter, wispier look, and maybe your congregation or your setting is much more formal and you think the burlap is out of place somehow, sheer fabrics like tulle and net, things like that are good to drape. They drape well. So depending on what you wanted to do, you could choose from all sorts of fabrics. I've even used quilting cottons for some fabrics at times when I wanted a certain look. So use your imagination. One more possibility for setting the stage is to have something that calls to mind Jesus is washing the feet of his disciples. If you love me, follow my example. Follow my example. Jesus washed the disciples' feet. So to have a jug and maybe a bowl so that you could pour the water into that, and a towel, just leaving it there, helping to set the stage, will evoke that idea.
I would like to spark your attention for ways to welcome the children to the Ash Wednesday service. Ash Wednesday is the first day of Lent, the first day of the preparation for the whole season leading up to Easter. The service is one that can be very full of gloom and doom, appropriate for Ash Wednesday and the Lenten season, but not always understood by children, and maybe not even understood by their parents, because maybe they haven't attended an Ash Wednesday service in a while, or maybe they don't know how to explain it to their children. So what a wonderful opportunity to help the parents and help the children understand a little bit more of the symbolism of Ash Wednesday.
It's important for the children to be a part of this service because when they see the cross of ashes go on their forehead along with all the other adults in the congregation, they get the idea that they're important right now. They're not just important as adults, but right now they're a part of what's going on in the congregation. Another way to do that is to talk about the messiness of the ashes and how even though our lives can be messy, we can mess up, so to speak, but we still receive forgiveness from God. Since the Ash Wednesday service is one of the services that parents are least likely to bring their children to, why not send out a special invitation to the children and to their parents, telling them what the service is going to be like, what they can expect, how long is the service going to last, is there a special prayer that they could learn ahead of time so that they feel a part of that section of the service, and talk to them about the fact that the ashes will be placed on their forehead, or you may give them an option to have them placed on their hand. That might be more comfortable for children when they're getting used to that idea. You could also provide a worksheet, something like this, where they could draw the cross here as a way of educating them about that. That could be sent home with the parents to do even ahead of time. Another thing to do is to invite children to be a part of the leadership of the service. They could read a scripture. They could hand out the bulletins. They could be an acolyte for the service. They could be the one to put the ashes on the forehead of the pastor. There's a lot of ways to get them involved, and if they're involved, their parents will be there more than likely. During the service, think about the language of the hymns and the songs that you sing and the prayers that you include. Is there any way to make them more child-friendly? I know there are some very traditional songs that we like to sing at Ash Wednesday, and certain scriptures, of course, that are read at Ash Wednesday. But maybe one year you could read the scriptures from a children's Bible. Think of ways that will spark their imagination and their interest in this service. Another important thing about including children in the Lenten season is to talk about the things they see around them. Why do we have purple pyramids during this season? Why is the pastor wearing a black stole on Ash Wednesday? Colors and symbolism is all around us, but sometimes we don't talk about it or tell the children why they're there or why it's important. Share those things with the children.
If you want a take-home idea for people who are maybe not coming to church each Sunday, or even for those who are, we did a prayer chain, a Lenten prayer chain. Each family took home one of these bags, opened it up, and found strips of colorful paper and an instruction sheet that explained what the plan was. And here's what the plan was. Take out one of these each day and pray over those ideas. So, for example, if the family pulled out God's call on your life, they would pray about something related to that. And then they would make a chain link out of it. The next day, maybe they would pick up political unrest around the world, and they would add that to their chain. And each day they would continue until they had a really long chain, and they would bring it in on Easter morning and add it to all the other chains. And we had an example of how much we've been praying for each other and for issues together all throughout our congregation. One of the special things that we did too was to go through the directory and pull out lists of family names and have groups in there, like this is some of the M families: McDonald, Malloy, Marsh, Marshall, and McBee. And so when you pick this out, you pray for these folks, add that to your chain, and so on. You should have seen the big chain we made by Easter. It was beautiful. If your intention for this Lenten season is to help your congregation better understand the symbols of Lent, have I got some ideas for you? We did one time a station to station to station thing that people could go through at their own pace, sort of like they would with prayer stations, but it was just an educational time for the most part. We started with things like light, the reason that light is important in Lent and what it symbolizes, and we used candles for that. Then we went on to the dark colors of purple and things like that, and what that means, and had activities for that. Even had a special time for Ash Wednesday, and used not only a black cloth and darkness, but these little charcoal drawing sticks that I got from the art supply place, and you could make a cross on the forehead here. And remember that you are from dust and going to return to dust. Sometimes I like to go all out. Other times I like to be simple. Sometimes I like to go 3D. Sometimes I want it to fit in the folder. So here are some ideas that will help you understand how this could spark your imagination with what you have and what resources you have, what space you have, what your budget is, and so on. Some more symbols of Lent were the pelican, the rooster, and the peacock. And I had large three-dimensional samples of those, as well as pictorial samples that I had. So either way I wanted to go with that, I could. Other symbolism that we included in this particular study were pomegranates, butterflies, pretzels, and other Holy Week issues like nails and dice and cross. Use your imagination. You can come up with some good ideas for ways to help people explore the traditional symbols of Lent and find meaning in them today.
This Holy Week, consider making a resurrection garden. This is a great project for the children of your church, but their families will enjoy doing it with them, and I think many adults would enjoy doing this project as well. Gather all the supplies. I'll show you all of those in just a minute and have a list for you at the end of this presentation. But gather all the supplies on Palm Sunday and allow people to make their resurrection gardens at church and take it home with them for the week. If you use the fast-growing grass seed, within 3 to 4 days, they should see grass growing in their garden. And it will be very exciting to see that grow as you get closer to Easter Sunday. One important thing to keep in mind is that your resurrection garden doesn't have to look like the one I'm about to put together. If you Google this, you can find hundreds of examples of people making resurrection gardens. Look around your house for supplies, and remember, this is intended to spark your imagination, and it's intended to be a focal point for families to take home on Palm Sunday and keep the story of Holy Week as a focus throughout the week. and they get to watch what's happening every day in their resurrection garden. It can sometimes be hard to keep children and families engaged in the Lenten season because it's so long, 40 days plus the Sundays. We want them engaged in stories of Jesus from Ash Wednesday to Easter Sunday morning. How about providing a path for their home that encourages them to read stories about the path that Jesus was walking? I hope this will spark your imagination. You could provide a purple cloth, which is the liturgical color for Lent, rocks, either real rocks, or you can have construction paper rocks. It would be nice to have 2 different colors. You'd need a total of 47 rocks, 39 in a darker color, and the rest in a lighter color, such as this. These will be used for all the Sundays and Ash Wednesday. Have the families make their path on this cloth any way they want. They could even change it up if they want to. They may not be able to keep it out all the time, so each time they get it out, the path may be a little different. It would be nice if they could read a story every day during Lent, but if not, encourage them to take time on Sunday and read a story of something that Jesus was doing during his ministry years. I picked the story of Zacchaeus. Think about that story and encourage them to, whatever story they pick, to think about one word that will help them remember that story. What's one word they could come up with out of that story? For instance, the story of Zacchaeus, it might be the word house, because Jesus was going to Zacchaeus' house. They could write that on the Sunday stone to help them remember that story. The main thing is you want to keep them engaged and walk this pathway with Jesus to Easter Sunday. I hope this will spark your imagination for some similar activity like this. Again, I want to remind you of this book and tell you that they do have several symbol stories, such as the symbols of water, bread, fish, candle, with a very short devotion that you could use for this rock path as well. So again, I hope this will spark your imagination.
You know, Jodi, I think that There have been enough ideas shared here that people can take some of these ideas, let them spark their imaginations for ways to use it in their own settings, with their own people and their own budgets and their own energy level and their own physical plant and so on. But some people are going to be thinking, I cannot make it through programming for all of Lent. It's so long, and I just don't have the energy for that. I don't have the resources, the personal resources to do that. But you know what they can do? They can focus on just Holy Week. Just Holy Week. That's a perfectly wonderful way to observe Lent.
It is. And the very first thing that they need to do is, once again, think about your intention for the week. All of those questions we asked earlier, and we will share with you again at the end of this presentation, need to be thought about if you're planning for Holy Week.
You know, one reason to really focus on Holy Week is that if you skip straight from Palm Sunday, woo, here comes Jesus, woo, Palm Sunday, and then the next thing you do is, woo, Jesus has risen, you've kind of missed all the important stuff that's happened in the middle. And it seems to me that Easter is even more of a celebration when you know what we're celebrating and when you've gone through the difficulty of Holy Week with Jesus. So recognizing those horrible times, those really difficult moments that were gut-wrenching and heart-wrenching and filled with tears and guilt and all these things, if you go through that, then you can have a celebration for Easter like you couldn't have otherwise.
Absolutely. And that makes me think of the children again, of course, and being sure that if you do have services on Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, that they, again, are included with their families. Again, I think giving them information ahead of time, being intentional about educating them about what those services will be. Their Sunday school teachers could help with that. A newsletter article could help with that. A personal letter sent home to them, or maybe an email or a text is more appropriate, but just giving them the information so that their children will know what to expect out of that, and not to shy away from all of those difficult things, but to talk about those things beforehand. Children can handle the truth, and the language just needs to be thought of, and the work needs to be done before the service happens.
Setting the scene, again, just
Yes.
another way of setting the scene and helping people to observe these special times. So if for Maundy, Thursday, if you're going to do a foot washing, talk about that and what that has to do with anything. If what you're going to do is focus mostly on the communion, the Last Supper, then focus on that. And they've seen communion before, and so helping them understand this is a continuation of this particular communion. This is the experience that all those others are modeled after. So those kinds of things can be great educational opportunities and help them understand the richness of this time.
There are a lot of resources out there for Lent and Easter, and we hope that you will be prepared at the round table to share in the comments section some of your favorite resources or something new that you found. We want to share just a few of our favorites that we found. First one is this Faithful Families book. Sandra and I have just loved reading through as we've been getting ready for this presentation. It's by Tracy Smith. She has other books, similar ones on Advent, and then her first book was, I think, just Faithful Families. It was just a good basic book. It needs to be on your shelf because it has lots of good ideas. The other one is that I want to share is Live Lent.
It is actually produced by the discipleship ministry team of the Cumberland Presbyterian Church, and it takes the approach of a weekly study that you could do in your family or for the whole congregation. Each week is a different Lenten discipline, such as fasting, prayer, almsgiving. I was going to read all of them, worship. Each week you focus on one of those disciplines as a way to introduce those kinds of things to a congregation or to a family. What do you have,
Now, those
Sandra?
would be available at the Resource Center, right?
These are available in the Resource Center,
Right.
and all of these will be on a resource sheet that you can get at the end of this presentation.
This is one that we've used here at the church before. It's Lent in Plain Sight, and it's organized, again, in a weekly thing, but with individual day devotions. So each week there's a focus on a particular everyday object like coins or cross or bread. It starts on Ash Wednesday with dust. So each day has its own special thing, but it's within that week that has that theme. I really like that. And it helps you to realize that you don't have to go to the store or go to a workshop or really spend a lot of money or really work hard to make some special things. Special things are great, but you don't have to do that. You can focus on everyday objects and find meaning there that will help you focus and get ready for the coming of Holy Week. I like also to do banners, and I mentioned banners a little bit earlier. There are a million banner books out there, and Pinterest is filled with ideas, and you'll find banner ideas anywhere you look. But a lot of the banners that I've found really that I like a lot just have too many words on them. And I like to have things be just an impression or a design or a symbol or something that just kind of sets the tone. And then the viewer can read into it what they read into it that day. It gives the Holy Spirit a little room to work individually with you and help you to find that meaning for that day. So I found another book that's called Banners Without Words. It's pretty old, but it's a good one, and it has exactly what it says, Banners Without Words, and it has very good ideas that are there, very simple pictures that could easily be done. If you don't think you're a big artist or anything, that's okay, because this has really simple ideas that can be adapted for whatever medium you wanted to use. So those are some pretty good ideas. I would encourage you to try to make a banner if you want to, and don't forget to save a little time, because when you're experimenting with things, they don't always work out. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they work beautifully, but sometimes they go a little wrong, and you might want to have time for a plan B. At least that's my experience.
Okay, be prepared to share your resources that you like.
As we are bringing this presentation of Cumberland Reflections to an end, I would like to circle back around to the very beginning and talk about the number one takeaway that Sandra and I would love for you to set as a practice for yourself for the planning of Lent and Easter, or any liturgical season really. And that is the practice of setting the intention for the season. I know we've mentioned it a lot, but it's so important, especially now in churches where we're needing to plan new activities because congregations have changed, communities have changed. Maybe we have some new challenges or some new possibilities. So this practice is especially important now. You may be planning by yourself in your church office or with your session or your family at home, but take some time to think about how you want your Lent and Easter season to look, and what things do you want to do during that special time. If you're planning for a congregation, please remember to include the children and the youth. And remember that setting the stage and creating an atmosphere is so important to the liturgical seasons. At the beginning of your planning, it's very important to pause long enough to ask these open-ended questions of yourself or of the people that you are planning with, and allow them time to think about them and to answer before you begin your planning. Things like, what would you like Lent and Easter to look like or be about this year? What questions do you have about the Lent and Easter season? How would you like to celebrate these seasons? Or maybe we could do this during Lent or during Holy Week. Whatever questions you ponder, go into the season with an open spirit and allow the Holy Spirit to work with your plans. And may it be a holy season for you, your family, and your church family.